What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound brought to you by the Hockey News. I am your host, Emma Lingan, and I am joined today by Michael Augello and Karine Hains of the Hockey News, coming at you to talk about all things NHL, hockey, otherwise around the hockey world. The second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs has finally ended, and we are heading into the conference finals. But before we get into all of that we're going to chat about today, do want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right. Well, I'm glad we have both of you here today, our Buffalo Sabres writer and our Montreal Canadiens writer, because that series came to an end in overtime in Game 7. So Montreal, of course, is advancing to the Eastern Conference Final after beating Buffalo in Game 7. So Alex Tuch, guy that we've talked about a lot on the show before as a guy who is, shall we say, underperforming, but he is the overtime hero. He scored his second game-winning goal in a Game 7 in these playoffs. Just how we all drew it up, right, Corinne? The Canadiens, of course, the Canadiens are going to take on the Carolina Hurricanes now, starting on Thursday. Hurricanes looking to stay strong. They have not lost a game yet in these playoffs. So Corinne, I'll go to you first. Who was the biggest standout, do you think, in this series for Montreal? And when you look ahead to them playing Carolina, what do you think are any kind of glaring concerns that you're worried about?
Well, obviously the standout has to be Jacob Dabish. I mean, what a performance from that guy. There are some games that Montreal had no business winning, and he's there standing like a wall. I mean, just think about last night. If he's not there, they're losing. I mean, I don't know what Fowler would have done in net, granted, but without Dabish, the Sabres are going through. So he's been the standout. Obviously, it's hard not to talk about Newhook because not only did he score in this Game 7, but he also scored in previous Game 7 as well. So that's twice that he gets the Canadiens through. And if you told me before the start of the playoffs that after 2 rounds, Alex Newhook would have the same number of points as Cole Caulfield and Uri Slavkovsky, I would have said, are you crazy? And yet, there we are. And none of his points are on the power play, whereas the other two have 8 points on the power play and one, at even strength. So that's just amazing performance from Newhook. As for concerns, well, the lack of production of the top line at 5-on-5, obviously. I mean, I feel like I've been writing over and over that the Canadiens cannot go through if those three guys don't perform at even strength. And yet, here we are. They're going through the third round. But I can't believe that it's not going to catch up to them eventually. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, Mike, we've talked about it a little bit, but now Montreal goes on to face Carolina, two teams that are coming into this Eastern Conference final in very different situations. Like I said, Carolina has not lost a game yet. They've had 2 straight 4-game sweeps. Meanwhile, Montreal has gone to 7 games in each of their first 2 series. So looking at that, and obviously you were watching this series against Buffalo very closely, who do you think needs to really step up for the Canadiens? And are there any concerns that you see as they go to face Carolina?
Well, I agree with Corinne. Dobish and Newhook obviously were the standouts in this series. I can't blame Dobish for the defensive failings of his team in Game 6, where he just got swamped. But I think an honorable mention should be Demidov, who I thought, as the series rolled along, started to play not only offensively really good, but defensively as well, which I was surprised at, being a very young player. As for the concerns, I also agree with Corinne. The top line, I was surprised that Marty St. Louis did not sort of mimic what Lindy Ruff did after Game 5 and break up the top unit and try to, especially on the road in Game 7, make the matchups more difficult, because they put Slavkovsky, Suzuki, and Caulfield out there a lot, and really 5-on-5 they didn't do much, and they really need them to produce if they have any kind of chance against Carolina.
Well, regardless, the Canadiens are moving on. The Buffalo Sabres, of course, heading home for the summer. So, Mike, what do you think, looking at the Buffalo side of this, what do you think was the biggest difference maker for them that led to them being eliminated? Because I think if you look at particularly game 7, it seemed like it was all Buffalo until it wasn't. And obviously, Dobish being a big part of that. But I mean, what was the biggest difference maker? Where did the Sabres go from here? And I think we also have to talk about Alex Tuch and his role in all of this, or lack of a role, maybe. He had 0 points and was a -8 in the series against Montreal. And I mean, how is that gonna affect his free agency, do you think?
Well, starting with, the difference maker, what was the difference in the series? I think obviously the goaltending battle, because they had to keep going back from Luukkonen to Lyon, and they weren't getting consistent performances. A lot of people are blaming Luukkonen for the goal, the new hook goal. It was a knuckleball. It was partially screened. I thought he had kept them in the game when they were down 2-0 to enable them to make a comeback. But the inconsistency of the goaltending. I mean, when you have 4 goaltenders in your system, you have none. I mean, you need to have a number 1 and then have a good number 2. And obviously, right now, Dobish is the number 1 for Montreal, and Fowler is the heir apparent. Buffalo, you have an uncertain situation in goal. Where do they go from here? I mean, they're similar to Montreal in the sense that they gained valuable playoff experience like Montreal did against Washington last year, and I think that will help them. But you mentioned Alex Tuch. I've been of the opinion throughout this entire year that Alex Tuch is gone. I don't think that his showing in the second round is going to hurt him in free agency, because his free agent class is practically bereft of any talent. He's the number 1 free agent. He's probably going to get more or just as much as Adrian Kempe did on his max deal. If the Sabres want to get anything for him, they probably would have to sign him and do a sign and trade. But he'll talk nice. He'll say, "Well, I'm open to it." I honestly, I don't think he's coming back, because I don't think they're going to pay him close to $11 million. They have a lot of young players like Zach Benson who they need to get under contract, and they have a lot of young players that are coming up through the system who I think they'll depend on. And I don't think they're going to sign Alex Tuch to an 8-year deal at 30 years old. So that's where I think the Sabres are going to be.
Well, Karine, what are your impressions of the Buffalo Sabres after this series in particular as a team? Where they go from here? And do you see those similarities with Montreal that Mike was talking about? And then, follow up to that, what do you think is going to happen with Alex Tuch?
Well, I agree with Mike. I mean, they've got some really good experience in these playoffs, and they are obviously a young team as well. The main difference being that their rebuild has been going on for quite some time, so they're kind of behind Montreal in that sense. But I was really impressed with their blue line, actually, and how fast their transition game is. I mean, Canadians had trouble with that all series long. Darlene, what a player. He really got under people's skin as well, not only on the ice, but in Montreal. I've heard a lot of comments about him. As for Tuch, I was surprised really by the performance of the Sabres top line at the start of the series with Thompson and Krebs as well. I thought they weren't showing what they normally did, so that was a bit puzzling. But to see Tuch go absolutely pointless and -8 in the series, that's just like, what's going on? I agree that he's gone. I don't think he has any intention of staying in Buffalo, and I think he might lose some money there, quite frankly, because if I'm a GM and I'm looking at his performance in playoffs, I'm like, how much is that guy really worth if he can't produce at crunch time? His team needed him, and he was nowhere to be seen.
Well, the weird thing, Emma, was that he was the leading scorer for them in the first round against Boston, and then no points in 7 games against Montreal. So you have to factor in the possibility that they may have been injured. I'll just touch on one thing when it comes to the Montreal escaping from their defensive zone. They completely relied on that bloop up the middle over. They could not get it out of their own zone clean along the wall up the middle. That's a big problem against a team like Buffalo, who's a little, is inexperienced. Carolina, with their speed and their defensive ability, is going to make it really tough on guys like Lane Hudson and Dobson and their defense.
Absolutely. And, that is what we're going to be looking forward to here in the Eastern Conference Finals, seeing Montreal against Carolina. Over on the Western side of things, in the West, we've got the Vegas Golden Knights facing off against the Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference Final. And, we talked about goaltending and that playing a role in this series with Montreal and Buffalo, but I think you got to look at the goaltending situation for Vegas. I mean, Carter Hart has been fine. He's got a .917 save percentage, 2.37 goals against. He's also got a really solid defense playing in front of him, which helps. But he's now going to be coming up against by far the deepest team that he's faced in these playoffs. And the Avalanche are the 7th team in playoff history to have 17 different players score a goal through the first 9 games of the playoffs. So definitely a tall order for Carter Hart. Mike, do you think that he's going to be able to withstand the depth and the pressure that Colorado is going to present to him? And if he can't, how much do you think that Vegas can rely on Adin Hill?
Well, if he can't withstand the pressure and withstand the 4-line attack that the Avalanche present, then it's going to be a short series. I mean, the one thing that Vegas can do and have been able to do in the last few years is play stifling defense in the playoffs. Adin Hill, I think anybody would admit, is a average to above average goaltender, and that's all they needed to win a Stanley Cup was consistency. They had Laurent Brossoit, and then they went to Hill, and now Hart. We know he's a good goaltender, and how he played in Philadelphia, he had some rust on him coming back and signing with Vegas. They're going to need him to play better. Anaheim and Utah are very good offensive teams, but again, they're inexperienced. So I think Vegas was able to get through them fairly easily. This is a completely different animal altogether. Guys like Jack Eichel and Mitch Marner will be checked into the ice. They will be suffocated by Colorado, and Vegas will. I don't know whether Vegas can withstand that offensive attack that Colorado has, so they will need their goaltending to really step up if they have a chance in this series.
Yeah, it's a good call out. Like you said, Colorado's 4-line attack is really unlike anything that Vegas or specifically Carter Hart has seen in these playoffs yet. So, Karine, what's your confidence level, not only in Carter Hart, but just in the Vegas Golden Knights to be able to withstand the pressure that the Colorado Avalanche are going to put on them?
To be honest, I think the Avalanche are kind of in a class of their own. I don't really see Vegas being able to overcome them. There's just so much scoring depth there. It's, so you can't always have your best defense on the ice for all the lines. So something's going to give. I think, Carter Hart's a good goalie, but he's not faced anything like what he's about to experience since he came back. And I dare say this series not going to be that long.
All right. Well, for all of the talk about the Colorado Avalanche and how dominant they have been throughout these playoffs, they are going to be coming into this series against Vegas a little bit banged up. You've got Arturi Lehkonen and Sam Malinski. They each missed the final 2 games in the second round with upper body injuries. Josh Manson missed 4 games with an upper body injury. Cale Makar has played every game of the postseason, but he has also absorbed quite a few big hits. He didn't practice over the weekend. Could be just maintenance or precaution. We don't know there. But Mike, when you look at all these injuries that the Avalanche have dealt with, or near injuries the Avalanche have dealt with, maybe in the case of Cale Makar, how concerned are you? Do you think that the wear and tear that they've dealt with is going to impact this series in a big way?
It could. That Vegas knows exactly what you just mentioned, so they're going to focus on that. It's easier said than done to lay the body on Cale Makar when he's at 100% and is at his elusive best. But if he's slowed down, then they might be able to, forecheck more effectively. I mean, we saw in that series, in the second round against Minnesota. Brent Burns, the ageless one, he stepped up. Brett Kulak scores the game-winning goal, the series clinching goal. So it's like they have some depth on the blue line, but yeah, I mean, for them to win the Stanley Cup, they're going to need Manson to play and Malinsky to play and Makar to be at his best.
Obviously, no team makes it through the Stanley Cup playoffs entirely unscathed. But Karine, when you look at these bumps and bruises and other injuries that the Avalanche have gotten along the way, you mentioned already you expect it to be a pretty quick series. But if they do endure further injury, how much do you think that changes the equation here?
I don't think that much. I mean, they've got depth. They got players who will be able to step up, and it's the playoffs. I mean, even if a guy is injured, he's not gonna, yeah, I'm not playing. Forget that. Everyone will do everything they can to play. I mean, that's something about hockey players. I mean, just look in the PWHL as well. You've got Marie-Philippe Poulin who's skating on one leg. Her knee is busted, and yet she's playing in the final. So, they won the Stanley Cup. They're going to push through those injuries and they'll be fine.
Absolutely. Nothing like it for sure. All right. Well, we of course have the quest to the Stanley Cup continuing this week. The conference finals in both the East and the West kicking off later this week. But shifting away from the playoff picture for a moment, there's still lots of things happening elsewhere in the hockey world. The offseason has already started for the rest of the teams in the league. So if we look at Toronto in particular, the Toronto Maple Leafs have agreed mutually to part ways with their assistant general manager, Brandon Pridham. He spent 12 years with the Maple Leafs after being hired from the NHL League office back in 2014. He was one of the organization's most trusted executives. He was their capologist, if you will. He was behind their salary cap strategy. So, Mike, what do you think of this decision for John Shaika and the Maple Leafs? Do you feel like making this much change in a short amount of time is going to be a good thing for them? And how do you kind of see the rest of this offseason unfolding?
Well, in terms of the managerial changes, this is sort of organic because Derek Clancy and Shane Doan, who are also moved on by the Leafs, were additions of Brad Treliving, so they didn't have a future. Pridham, it sounded like they wanted to keep him, but according to what Elliot Friedman said on his podcast yesterday, I think Pridham, after 12 years, saw the writing on the wall, that they wanted to go in a different direction. And, I'm just making a guess here. I don't know for sure, but it was talked about when Treliving took the job and Dubas went to Pittsburgh that Kyle Dubas wanted to bring Pridham to Pittsburgh. So if I had to guess where he's going to go, it would be Pittsburgh, but you never know. He interviewed, I believe, for the Nashville GM job and interviewed for the Leafs GM job. So he's well thought of, and I'm sure he'll land on his feet. But I think that changes needed in Toronto. There was a stagnation in Toronto. And also the bad hiring of a coach that wasn't a good fit for the team. And I think the organization needed to be flushed. And I think you're going to also see some additions. Chase Glassberg, who is the Utah capologist, maybe the guy that they're targeting to bring in. But this will be one of a number of changes that we will see from now until probably the beginning of training camp next September.
Yeah, all speculation for now on where Pridham will end up next, but it's a good call out about Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh. Definitely a situation to keep an eye on. Karine, what do you think of what's going on? Just the state of the the Toronto Maple Leafs right now with the front office and all the change that's happening there. I mean, moving on one hand, you can kind of understand, a new general manager, fresh start, clean house, but what do you make of them making this many changes this quickly?
I don't think it's that surprising because he was part of the previous regime, and you mentioned he was a capologist, and the Leafs they built around those four guys, and they gave them so much money and so much power with the no trade clause and all that. I mean, that didn't work, did it? I mean, they had they had a good core four, but aside from that, they couldn't build a roster that could get them where they wanted to go. So I'm not really surprised that they moved on from him. However, I think it's a bit weird to be giving the keys to the city to John Chikra. But, I mean, that's been talked about a lot. And I expect there'll be plenty of change in Toronto on the ice as well. So, the Leafs will find a way to make the news, even if they're not even in the playoffs. They always did.
Well, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of change. One of the changes we've seen already is in the head coaching position. Craig Berube is likely headed out. The Oilers have received permission to talk to the former Maple Leafs head coach. So, Mike, I can just see you licking your chops over there. Can't wait to talk about this one. Berube, of course, fired by the Maple Leafs last week. He had a disappointing season behind the bench, to say the least. He coached the team to a 32, 36, and 14 record, put them out of the playoffs for the first time in 10 seasons. So now there's a lot has been said about whether, maybe it was a fit issue, that Berube was just not the right fit for the roster they had, but he got a lot of success out of them the previous season. So, Mike, what do you think of Berube as a candidate for the Oilers job?
Go ahead, Edmonton, hire him right now. No, Craig Berube is a very nice guy. He's a good man. It just didn't work in Toronto. It was clear from the beginning of the season. He likes veteran clubs. He doesn't handle his goaltenders very well. Well, that's not a problem in Edmonton because they don't have any goaltenders. So he, but I look at the situation and I think he's probably the leading candidate if the Vegas Golden Knights do not make Bruce Cassidy available. And the chatter is they, I don't know if they want to make him available to a division rival like Los Angeles or Edmonton. So if they're blocked from going after Cassidy, I think Elliot Friedman reported not only are they talking to Berube, but they're talking to Peter Laviolette. They're going to look at veteran coaches who have had success. And they're under time constraints right now because they have a 2-year window until I think Connor McDavid leaves. And by the way, if the goal of the Toronto Maple Leafs is to have Connor McDavid wearing blue and white, the best news they could have is Craig Berube coaching the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, there you go. Karine, what do you think of Berube as a fit with Edmonton? I mean, is it there? I mean, Edmonton, I feel like it's a team that always comes up with, they have so many problems they need to address, and the head coach being just one of them. So how much can we really expect, whether it's Berube or anyone else, to really kind of help Edmonton right the ship if they are under this time constraint?
I don't think Berube is a good fit. I mean, the Oilers' main problem, as Mike has mentioned, has been goaltending and defense as well. And if you look at the Leafs, Berube, coached last season, they were the second worst team in the league for the goals against. So, you need to fix your defense. Are you really going to go after the coach who had that kind of record in the last season? And I agree with Mike as well. I see kind of McDavid signing short term as kind of an ultimatum, like sort it out or I'm out. And, the main problem isn't really behind the bench, is that they never focused on anything but the offense through the draft and the way they built their roster. So I wouldn't know where to start to fix the Oilers to, entice McDavid into staying. I don't think that's going to happen, whatever they do, because, if you look at the free agents market this summer, there's hardly any good goaltenders going to be available. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, hey, Stuart Skinner's available. So no, just kidding. He is available, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Oilers do, where they go from here. Shifting outside of the NHL, of course, the season has ended for most of the NHL right now. A lot of NHL players are over in Europe playing in the World Championships. So one storyline that has really been interesting to follow, I think, during these World Championships has been Jet Greaves, his role as Canada's goaltender throughout the event. He's got a 2.0 goals against average, 902 save percentage. He put up career best numbers with the Columbus Blue Jackets last season. So he's really starting to kind of come into his own. And, considering he's just 25 and Canada's goaltending future has been, infamously unclear on the international stage, at least. Mike, do you think that Jet Greaves having his little kind of coming out party at these World Championships is going to be, it's going to be a sign that it'll make him a potential candidate to play for Canada at the, these future best on best events?
Well, it's going to depend on his level of consistency in the NHL between now and the Four Nations, which I think will be in 2027 or, so. I mean, I think right now he should be in the mix. I mean, you look at the goaltenders that they brought to the Olympics. Binnington's over 30, Kemper's over 30. Some of the other candidates, and the World Cup is in 2028. So, they don't really have. Everybody was pointing at Devin Levi as a potential guy who would be on Canada's list in terms of a future goaltender, but he's been in the American Hockey League. So guys like Greaves are going to have to be the future for Canada unless somebody just comes out of the World Juniors or out of the AHL in the next couple of years and stands on his head.
Yeah, Karine, as our resident Canadian here on the show, what do you make of the sort of, emergence of Jet Greaves? Obviously had an impressive season with Columbus. As I mentioned, they just barely missed the playoffs, and he seems to be a player on the rise for them. But where do you see him kind of fitting into Canada's international, they're playing on the international stage?
Well, the door is wide open. I mean, it used to be that Canada was just so strong in net with the likes of, Patrick Roy, Martin Brodeur, Carey Price, and then nobody was left. I mean, they took Samuel Montembeault to the Four Nations face-off last year, and then this year it completely collapsed with the Canadiens. So yeah, I mean, Greaves is doing well. I don't put too much stock on the World Championships though, because often the best players are not all there. So as Mike said, it's going to be important to see how consistent he is in the NHL. I think that's going to be the biggest addition, to be fair.
Well, and he's playing for a Columbus team that has just barely missed the playoffs for 2 seasons in a row now. So they're definitely going to be looking to make some advancements next season, and he's going to have to be a big part of that. Of course, if you want to read any more about the World Championships, the Stanley Cup Playoffs, any of the open GM and coaching searches, any of the things that we've talked about here on the show today, please head over to the Hockey News. It's been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start. It's a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That is going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in and listened to us talking some hockey today. We really do appreciate it. The show will be back. I will not, but the show will be back with an all-new episode on Thursday. Please tune in then. I will be back next week. But for now, for Michael Augello and Karine Hains, I'm Emma Lingan. This is The Wraparound, and we will see you next time.